The wind brushes softly through the vermilion gates, a hollow sigh against ancient wood. Outside, Beijing sleeps beneath a dusting of stars. But within these walls, the forbidden city does not sleep. It stirs quietly. A palace cat slips through moonlit corridors. A single droplet falls from a jade-tiled roof into a forgotten basin. The air hangs heavy, scented with fading sandalwood, damp stone, and the ghosts of 1,000 withheld breaths. You drift now, caught between sleep and waking like dust in a slant of moonlight through lattice windows. Beneath you, the cypress floor is cool and smooth as river-worn stone. Above, ancient timbers creak softly, settling like the bones of a sleeping giant. A lone candle flickers behind rice paper screens, not bright with celebration, but trembling, uncertain. One flame for a vast, echoing chamber, one small light. Against the weight of centuries, somewhere deep within this walled empire, a woman kneels, not in prayer, but in stillness. Her silk robe whispers faintly against stone. She is unseen, untouched, one thread in a tapestry woven from longing, duty, and dynastic ambition. Tonight, we don't approach the dragon throne with fanfare. We move in silence, past guards like statues cloaked in yellow, into the heart of a quieter empire. The empire of the bedchamber, where history unfolded not in battles or edicts, but in sighs, in glances, in silence. This is where our story begins, not in the brilliance of the throne room, but in the velvet dark of corridors, where footsteps fade and hearts wait unheard. Let the stillness settle around you. Breathe deeply and step forward. You are 15 summers old. Yesterday, you were picking mulberry leaves behind the mud brick house. The sun warm on your neck, the air thick with the drone of cicadas, and your mother's voice calling you sharpish for chores. Yesterday, your hands smelled of earth and green. Leaves, today. Today your hands are hidden inside sleeves, too long, too fine. Lotus silk, they called it. Cool as water against your skin. A color like the palest dawn sky. It feels alien. Precious, a shroud. You remember the coarse hemp of your old tunic, the comforting scratch, gone, sold. Probably with everything else sold. The word echoes in the hollow space the swaying palanquin makes inside your head. Your father wouldn't meet your eyes. His face was grey stone. Your mother's touch, when she fastened the silk robe with trembling fingers, was colder than the jade pendant they hung round your neck, a cheap thing, bought for the occasion, a pathetic dowry for the imperial city. Her tears fell hot and silent onto your hair as she whispered things you couldn't hear over the roaring in your ears. For the family, honor, a chance, the words meant nothing. Only the finality of the palanquin's curtain falling, shutting. Out the familiar slant of your village roof, the dusty path, the stooped figure of your mother shrinking, shrinking, until she was swallowed by the dust, kicked up by the bearer's feet. Swallowed, like you are being swallowed now. Another jolt, sharper. You bite your lip, the metallic temps of blood startling on your tongue. The rhythmic swaying stops. Silence, thick, waiting silence. Then a low murmur of voices outside, unfamiliar, clipped. The scrape of wood against stone. The palanquin tilts slightly, then settles. Your heart hammers against your ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage of silk and bone. This is it. The end of the journey, the beginning of what? The curtain is pulled aside, not roughly, but with an impersonal efficiency. Daylight, harsh after the crimson gloom, floods in, making you blink. The air that rushes in is different, heavy, cool, laden with scents that make your nostrils flare. Sandalwood, yes, rich and smoky, but beneath it, something older, deeper. The damp, mossy breath of ancient stone. It smells like a tomb that hasn't been opened in centuries. It smells like power. A figure blocks the light, not a bearer. Tall, lean, draped in somber grey robes that fall straight as waterfalls. A eunuch, his face is smooth, ageless, expressionless as a carved mask. His eyes, dark and depthless, sweep over you, taking in the silk, the pendant, your face. There is no warmth there, no curiosity, only assessment. Like a farmer checking the teeth of a newly purchased mule. He says nothing, merely gestures with a pale, long-fingered hand. Out. Your limbs feel stiff, uncooperative. You fumble slightly as you step down, the smooth leather soles of your new slippers whispering against stone flags worn smooth by countless footsteps. The courtyard yawns before you, vast and terrifying. High walls, painted a deep, forbidding vermilion, soar upwards, topped with glazed yellow tiles that catch the afternoon sun like dragon scales. The scale is immense, crushing. You feel smaller than a grain of rice dropped onto a banquet table. The sky is a narrow strip of indifferent blue, far, far above. The air is still here, trapped within the walls, carrying that complex scent, sandalwood, damp stone, the faint, acrid temps of coal smoke from distant kitchens, and underneath it all, a whiff of something sweetly cloying, decaying flowers. Perhaps, from unseen gardens, guards stand at intervals along the walls, rigid as the stone guardians flanking the massive gate you must have passed through. Their armor, lacquered, black and yellow, gleams dully. Their faces are turned forward, eyes fixed on some invisible point in the middle distance. They do not look at you. They do not speak. They are part of the architecture, as immovable and silent as the walls themselves. Their silence is louder than any shout. It tells you everything. You are nothing here, less than nothing, a temporary, insignificant speck. The eunuch in grey turns without a word and begins to walk. His steps are silent on the stone, a soft glide. You scramble to follow, your own slippers making tiny, pathetic scuffing sounds that seem absurdly loud in the immense silence. He leads you through an archway, into a narrower corridor, the high walls pressing closer. The light dims. The scent of damp stone intensifies, mixed now with the dusty smell of old wood from the intricately carved beams overhead. Shadows pool in the corners, deep and cool. Lanterns hang unlit, waiting for the dusk. You pass closed doors, heavy wood, bound with iron, their surfaces dark with age and lacquer. What lies behind them? Rooms of unimaginable luxury, or cells? You don't know, you don't dare ask. You are taught without words, by the oppressive silence, by the eunuch's unyielding back, by the sheer, crushing weight of the place. You bow your head. You keep your eyes lowered, fixed on the grey hem of the eunuch's robe, just a pace ahead. You move silently, you breathe shallowly, you make yourself small, invisible, and mostly, you wait. The eunuch stops before a simple wooden door, less imposing than the others. He produces a heavy iron key and unlocks it with a soft clunk. The door swings inward, revealing a small, sparsely furnished room. A narrow wooden bed covered with a thin blue quilt. A low table. A single high window covered with paper, letting in a muted, greyish light. A simple ceramic basin and ewer stand on a stand. It smells of dust and old straw. He gestures again. You step inside. The room is cold, barren. The eunuch doesn't follow. He stands in the doorway, a silhouette against the gloom of the corridor. For the first time, he speaks. His voice is high, soft, utterly devoid of inflection, like wind sighing through dry reeds. Rest. Food will come. Speak only when asked. Do not leave this room. A pause. His dark eyes seem to pin you to the spot. You are here to wait. The word hangs in the air after the door clicks shut behind him. Wait. It echoes in the silence of the tiny room. You stand frozen, the smooth silk of your robe suddenly clammy against your skin. The scent of sandalwood from the distant halls mingles with the dust in your nostrils. The cool, damp stone smell seeps up from the floor. The silence presses in, thick and heavy, broken only by the frantic thudding of your own heart. You are 15. You are alone. You are dressed in silk finer than anything your village ever dreamed of. You are in the heart of the emperor's palace, and your purpose, carved into the cold air by that soft, dead voice, is simply this: wait to be chosen. The enormity of it settles upon you, heavier than the palace walls. You sink onto the edge of the hard bed, your trembling hands smoothing the cheap blue quilt. Outside, in the corridor, the silence stretches, profound and watchful. You stare at the blank paper covering the window, seeing nothing. Waiting has already begun. It tastes like dust and damp stone, and the metallic residue of fear on your tongue. The palace breathes around you, ancient and indifferent, and you are a tiny, fragile thing caught in its vast, silent lungs. Silence. It's not the quiet of your village at dusk, filled with the chirrup of crickets and the low murmur of neighbors settling. This is a different creature entirely. The silence of the palace is thick, watchful, a living thing that presses against your ears, broken only by sounds that serve as punctuation marks in a vast, unreadable text. You learn its language quickly. The soft, almost inaudible sweep of a broom on distant flagstones at dawn. The faint clatter of dishes from the unseen kitchens, leagues away down twisting corridors. The occasional, startling cry of a pheasant from the imperial gardens, a sound so wild and free it feels like a trespass. And the chimes. Always the chimes. They mark the hours with a cold, metallic clarity. A single, resonant bong that seems to vibrate in the marrow of your bones, echoing through the stone passages long after the sound itself has faded. Sometimes, deeper in the night, you hear the rhythmic tap-tap-tap of the night watchman's wooden clappers, a dry, hollow sound that speaks of vigilance in the velvet dark. Time here is not a river flowing. It is a series of locked boxes, each hour measured, contained, dictated. And the Son of Heaven, the Emperor himself, lives encased within the most rigid box of all. You learn this not through grand pronouncements, but through the subtle, suffocating machinery that governs everything, even the most intimate breaths taken within these vermilion walls. The knowledge seeps in like the damp rising from the stone floor of your small room. It comes through the older women, the ones who have been waiting longer, whose eyes hold the flat sheen of resignation. Their whispers, barely audible as you kneel together mending endless bolts of silk destined for others. Paint a picture not of divine passion, but of celestial bureaucracy. The Emperor's life, they murmur, is governed by clocks, water clocks, dripping with relentless precision, incense sticks burning down to mark shorter intervals, sundials casting long, slow-moving shadows across courtyards. His rising, his meals, his audiences, his studies, even the brushstrokes he applies to edicts. All are prescribed. All are watched. All are recorded by silent scribes in dark corners, their brushes scratching across paper like the skittering of insects. Desire, you learn, is no exception. It too is regulated, scheduled, reduced to ink on paper. You see the evidence of it. One grey afternoon, a senior eunuch, his robes a deeper, more forbidding grey than the one who brought you, glides past the open doorway of the room where you sit with the others. He carries a long, narrow scroll box of polished dark wood, clutched against his chest like a sacred relic. One of the women near you, her fingers momentarily stilling on her embroidery, lets out a breath so soft it's almost a sigh. The roster, she whispers, the word barely forming on her lips. Her eyes flicker towards the corridor, then down again to her needlework. There's no envy in her gaze, only a profound weariness. Later, you overhear fragments. Fragments are all you ever get. Whispers about the Jing Shifang, the Office of Imperial Records, a place shrouded in even deeper mystery than the rest of the palace. It is there, they say, that the celestial calendar is consulted, the phases of the moon, the alignment of stars deemed auspicious or inauspicious, the emperor's own health, as reported by the perpetually anxious physicians. All these factors are weighed with the solemnity of statecraft. And then the names are written, names like yours, names on a list for the week, perhaps the month, a schedule of intimacy dictated by celestial mechanics and court physicians, not by the quickening of a pulse or the meeting of eyes. The act itself, the thing whispered about in hushed, fearful tones back in your village, the thing that brought you here wrapped in pale silk. It becomes, in this context, merely another imperial duty, another box to be ticked on the celestial schedule. You imagine the scroll unfurling on a polished table in some shadowed chamber. On one column, a list of names, consort this, lady that, concubine you. Beside each name, perhaps a notation, healthy, cycle favorable, docile temperament. On another part of the scroll, a separate list, dictated by the imperial physicians. Tonic of ginseng and deer antler velvet to be administered prior. Jade dragon elixir following. Duration, 1 stick of sandalwood incense. The body, your body, becomes a territory to be managed, its potential yield calculated, its processes optimized for dynastic continuity. Pleasure, if it exists for him amidst the tonics and the scrutiny, is incidental. For you, what could it possibly be? The summons, when it eventually comes for one of the women in your wing, is a chillingly quiet affair. No fanfare, no announcement, just the soft, almost apologetic cough of a junior eunuch at the doorway as dusk bleeds into indigo. His eyes scan the room, a light on a face, Li Mei, barely 16, her hands suddenly trembling in her lap. A single, silent nod. That's all. She rises, her movements stiff, like a puppet with tangled strings. The other women don't look up. Their needles fly faster, their heads bend lower. But the air in the room changes. It thickens. It tastes like cold tea left too long, bitter and stale. Li Mei is led away, not in triumph, but in silence, down. The corridor swallowed by gathering shadows. She returns hours later, long before dawn, carried not on a wave of glory, but on her own unsteady feet. Her face, in the dim light filtering through the paper window, is pale, utterly expressionless. She doesn't speak. She simply walks to her sleeping mat, lies down facing the wall, and pulls the thin blanket over her head. The silence that follows is heavier than before, pregnant with unasked questions, unvoiced fears. You see only the rigid line of her shoulder beneath the blanket, the utter stillness. You imagine the embroidered ceiling she must have stared at, intricate patterns of dragons and phoenixes swirling in the candlelight, distant and uncaring. You imagine the silence afterwards, profound and absolute, broken only by the rustle of silks as unseen attendants moved in the periphery, cleaning, tidying, erasing the traces of the imperial duty performed. You imagine the soreness, not just physical, but a deep, hollow ache in the center of the chest. The voicelessness, the profound isolation, even in the most intimate of acts mandated by the state. For you, waiting in your cold little room, the knowledge settles like frost. Your turn will come. It is inevitable. The scroll will bear your name. You will be bathed, perfumed, powdered, prepared like an offering for a ritual you barely understand. You will be carried along those silent corridors, a wrapped parcel delivered to the imperial bedchamber, and you will perform. You will hold your breath, not in anticipation, but in the desperate hope of disappearing, of becoming as insubstantial as the incense smoke curling towards the ceiling. You will stare at those embroidered phoenixes, tracing their gilded threads, with your eyes until they blur. You will endure the silence afterwards, the rustle of attendants, the feeling of being assessed, catalogued, and then dismissed. Your value in that moment, measured solely by your potential to bear the dragon's seed. Not a woman, a vessel, a scheduled entry on a scroll locked away in the Jing Shifang. The chimes mark the hours, relentless, indifferent, and you wait. Not for love, not for desire, but for the summons, for the duty, for the long night of breath held too long, and the silence that follows, echoing in the vast, cold heart of the forbidden city. The summons doesn't come as a cough at the door, not for this. It arrives like a shift in the air itself, a subtle tightening of the silence in the women's quarters. One morning, as you kneel with the others, your needle pulling crimson thread through the breast of a phoenix destined for an empress's robe, a senior matron appears. Her face is a landscape of carefully preserved wrinkles, her eyes sharp as obsidian chips. She doesn't speak to the room. Her gaze, impersonal and assessing, sweeps over the bowed heads, lingering for a heartbeat longer on you, on Li Mei, on to others. That lingering look is the only warning. A silent command hangs in the air, heavier than any spoken word. Be ready. The preparation begins, not at dawn, but as the last sliver of sun bleeds from the high barred windows, painting the dust motes gold before surrendering to twilight. You are taken not to the communal washing area, but to a small, windowless chamber deep within the warren of service rooms. The air here is warm, humid, thick with the cloying scent of unfamiliar flowers, peonies, perhaps forced to bloom out of season in hidden imperial hothouses. Steam curls from a sunken bathing pool lined with smooth, dark green tiles. The water isn't clear, but milky white, swirling with crushed pearls and herbs that release a sharp, medicinal tampes as you step down into its unexpected heat. It smells like wealth and obligation, a far cry from the brisk, cold river water of home attendants. Move with silent efficiency, their faces smooth masks, their hands impersonal. They are not women, but instruments of the ritual. They pour water over your hair, scented with osmanthus, the sweetness almost clawing against the steam. They scrub your skin with soft cloths and a paste of ground rice and jasmine, the friction gentle yet relentless, removing not just dirt, but the faintest memory of your old life, the scent of mulberry leaves and sun-warmed earth. Their touch is thorough, clinical, mapping the contours of your shoulders, the dip of your spine, the curve of your hips. You are a canvas being prepared, stripped bare not just of garments, but of any illusion of privacy. The water laps, warm and heavy, but a different kind of cold begins to seep into your bones. Dried with towels, softer than cloud, you are led to the center of the chamber. The steam clears slightly, revealing a long, low couch draped in unblemished white silk. It looks like an altar. Moonlight, pure and cold, streams through a high, narrow skylight you hadn't noticed before, falling directly onto the couch, turning the silk into a pool of liquid silver. The attendant's gesture, no words, are needed. The command is in the expectant stillness, in the way the moonlight seems to demand an occupant. You lie down. The silk is cool, shockingly so, against your warmed skin. The marble slab beneath it is colder still, leaching the heat from your body. You stare up at the patch of night sky visible through the skylight, a deep, fathomless indigo, punctuated by a single bright star. It feels like lying on ice under an indifferent heaven. The attendants step back, melting into the shadows beyond the moonbeam's edge. You are alone, exposed, bathed in that cold, celestial light. Then they come, not the attendants, but others. Two physicians, their robes the somber blue of deep water, their faces etched with the gravity of their task. And a senior eunuch you haven't seen before, his robes a rich, dark plum, his face a carefully composed blank. Their footsteps are silent on the damp tiles. They surround the couch, not looking at your face, but at your body lying in the moonlight. Their presence is a physical pressure, a violation of the intimate space of your own skin. The ritual begins. It is wordless, precise, chilling in its detachment. Cool, dry fingers. The physicians press against the pulse point in your wrist, not checking for life, but for rhythm, for balance, for the humors believed to dictate fertility. The touch is impersonal, like a scribe checking the tension of a brush. He leans closer, his breath smelling faintly of chrysanthemum tea and something bitter, examining your eyes, the color of your tongue held mutely between your lips. You feel like a horse at market. The second physician, an older woman with hands like bird claws, steps forward. Her touch is not gentle. She prods the flesh of your arms, your thighs, assessing muscle tone, the layer beneath the skin. She measures the span of your hips with bony fingers that feel like calipers made of ice. Her scrutiny is intense, focused solely on the potential your body holds, the architecture of your bones deemed suitable or not for bearing imperial weight. She parts your knees without ceremony. The cold air of the chamber rushes in, a shocking intimacy. Her examination is swift, clinical, devoid of any human recognition. It is mapping territory, assessing a vessel's readiness. A low sound escapes you, barely a whimper caught in your throat. The eunuch in plum robes makes a minute notation on a small ivory tablet he carries. The scratch of his stylus is obscenely loud in the silence. The focus shifts. Your hair, still damp, is lifted, its length and thickness assessed. Your teeth are bared in a grimace that isn't a smile, checked for whiteness, for evenness. The soles of your feet are examined for Callus's unacceptable blemishes on imperial property. Every inch is scrutinized, evaluated, catalogued. You cease to be you. You become a collection of parts. Eyes clear, suitable, skin unblemished. Smooth, hips adequately broad, womb presumably empty, awaiting imperial decree. The moonlight feels like a spotlight, pinning you to the cold slab. You stare at the single star, focusing on its cold, distant light, trying to float outside your body, outside this humiliation wrapped in the guise of honor. You are an object, laid bare on a silken altar, offered up to the cold calculus of dynasty. Finally, it ends. The physicians step back, murmuring low observations to the eunuch. He nods, his face impassive, and makes another notation. The attendants emerge from the shadows, carrying soft brushes and pots of fragrant powder. They dust your skin with talc scented with orchid and musk, the fine powder settling like snow, covering the places their eyes and hands have been attempting to erase the rawness, to restore an illusion of pristine, packaged perfection. They comb your hair until it shines like spilled ink in the moonlight, pinning it up with simple jade pins. They dress you in a fresh robe, this one a pale, shimmering, green like new willow leaves, softer even than the lotus silk you arrived in. It feels like another layer of wrapping. The eunuch steps forward. He holds a small, lacquered box. Opening it, he reveals a single, perfect lotus blossom carved from mutton-fat jade, pale and cool. He doesn't smile. His eyes, when they finally meet yours for a fleeting second, hold. No warmth, only the detached assessment of a task completed. He places the jade flower carefully beside you on the white silk couch. Not on you, but near you. A marker, a silent pronouncement. You are deemed acceptable. The plum-robbed eunuch nods. Once, a fractional dip of his chin. The physicians bow slightly and glide away, vanishing back into the shadows as silently as they came. The attendants remain, waiting. The ritual is over. The selection is made. You lie there for a moment longer on the cold silk, the jade blossom. Gleaming beside you, the scent of orchid powder cloying in your nostrils. You feel hollowed out, scoured clean. The clinical touch, the impersonal scrutiny, the silent notation on the ivory tablet. It wasn't about you. It was about protocol, about fulfilling an ancient, unyielding script written long before you were born. Slowly, you sit up. The attendants move to assist, but you don't need it. Your limbs feel heavy, distant. You look down at the jade lotus. It is beautiful, cold, utterly lifeless. You pick it up. It sits cool and heavy in your palm, a symbol not of favor, but of approval for a function. A smile touches your lips, unbidden. It is a small, fragile thing, devoid of joy, a mere curving of muscles, a reflex, a mask. Your fate, the trajectory of your entire existence within these walls, now hinges on a single, unpredictable variable. One look, one fleeting moment of imperial whim in a bedchamber you haven't yet seen. This intricate, dehumanizing ritual, this careful preparation, it guarantees nothing except your availability. Your body, perfumed and powdered, wrapped in the finest silk, is ready. But this submission, wrapped in embroidery, this reduction to a vessel deemed suitable, this is not desire. It is the quiet, efficient machinery of empire, oiled with the hopes and the husks of girls like you, bathed in moonlight and indifference. You hold the jade lotus tightly, its edges biting faintly into your palm, the only real sensation in the numb aftermath. The star still watches, cold and distant, through the skylight above. You are ready. You are chosen. You are nothing but a name on a list, a body on a slab, a faint, hopeful smile in the moonlight, waiting for the dragon's glance to fall. The silence returns, thick and watchful, as the attendants lead you away from the cold altar, back towards the waiting dock. The air in the women's quarters hangs thick, perpetually perfumed, yet underneath the cultivated sweetness of pear blossom powder and sandalwood sachets, there's a different scent. It's the faint, metallic temps of tension, sharp as a needlepoint, mingling with the ever-present damp stone smell. You live here now, not just in a room, but within a delicate, suffocating ecosystem. Dozens of women, dozens of mirrors reflecting, fragments of the same carefully constructed face. Each morning is a ritual performed in shared silence. You kneel before your low dressing table, a slab of polished dark wood reflecting the pale oval of your face. Beside you, Li Mei sits before her own mirror. Others are arrayed down the long, narrow room, each in her own small space, defined by a sleeping mat, a chest, a table. The light is grey, filtering through high papered windows. The only sounds are the soft scrape of ivory combs through hair, the gentle tap of porcelain lids on cosmetic jars, the sigh of silk as sleeves are adjusted. You see them reflected in the dim glass of your mirror, faces like porcelain dolls, meticulously painted, rice powder applied with feather-light brushes to erase the shadows beneath eyes, to create a flawless, bloodless canvas. Cheeks touched with the faintest stain of rouge, like the blush on a winter. Plum, lips painted a precise, modest coral, a bow-shaped curve achieved with infinite patience. Eyebrows meticulously darkened and drawn into perfect, slender arcs, the May brows, named after the silkworm moth, symbols of delicate beauty. The transformation is astonishing. The raw fear, the exhaustion, the flicker of resentment, all smoothed over, hidden beneath layers of powder and practiced serenity. They smile. Oh, they smile. Lips closed, corners tilted upwards just so, a curve learned through hours of practice before the mirror. It's a smile that reaches nowhere near the eyes. Those eyes, dark and watchful in the powdered faces, hold a different story. They flicker, darting reflections in the dim light. They note the quality of another's new silk robe, a gift perhaps from a distant relative, or maybe a subtle sign of favor. They observe the faint swell beneath a loose tunic, a hopeful sign not yet announced. They register the slight puffiness around another's eyes, hinting at tears shed silently in the dark. You learn the language of these painted faces, the subtle shifts beneath the powder, a slight tightening around Consort Wen's eyes when Lady Ling receives an extra portion of honeyed walnuts at breakfast. A small thing, insignificant, yet loaded. The infinitesimal pause in Lady Yu's graceful movements when the junior eunuch, delivering fresh flowers, places the most vibrant peonies near May's sleeping mat. The way the air seems to still, thicken, when the matron mentions, casually, that the emperor inquired after Consort Anne's health following her recent chill. Nothing overt. No raised voices, no accusations hurled across the room. That would be unthinkable, vulgar, destructive. Instead, the wars are waged in whispers so soft they might be the rustle of a sleeve. They are fought with objects, seemingly misplaced or accidentally damaged. A favorite hairpin, a delicate piece of carved jade, found snapped cleanly in half beneath a sleeping mat, not crushed, but broken with precise, cruel force. You find it one morning, its cool green pieces lying stark against the woven straw. Your heart clenches. It wasn't valuable, not truly, just a small comfort. A memory of your mother's trembling hands fastening it. Who, why, the faces around. You are serene masks, eyes lowered demurely, hands busy with embroidery or tea. No one meets your gaze. The silence accuses everyone and no one. The battles are fought with offerings that turn sour. The shared afternoon tea, a ritual of fragile camaraderie. The pot is passed, delicate cups filled with steaming chrysanthemum infusion. You take a sip, the taste is wrong. Underneath the floral sweetness, a bitter, medicinal tanx coats your tongue, not poison, likely too risky, too direct. But something to cause a mild discomfort, a stomach ache, perhaps a rash. Enough to make you look slightly off color, enough to ensure your name might be quietly skipped on the next roster scroll. You set the cup down carefully, your painted smile fixed. May, sitting beside you, takes a delicate sip of hers, her eyes meeting yours for a fleeting second. Is there a flicker of something, relief, complicity, or just your own paranoia reflected? You cannot tell. The bitterness lingers on your tongue long after the tea is cold. You share everything within these walls. The cramped quarters where silks brush against silks in the narrow spaces between sleeping mats. The simple, bland meals served on identical lacquered trays. The suffocating weight of the unchanging routine, the endless waiting. The gnawing loneliness that settles deep in the bones during the long watches of the night. You share the draughts that whistle through cracks in the winter, the stifling heat that clings in the summer, the pervasive smell of dust and old wood. You share the collective intake of breath when a eunuch appears at the doorway, the collective release, laced with envy or pity, when the summons falls on someone else. But trust is a luxury as rare and fragile as imperial jade. It is a dangerous flame in a room full of gunpowder. To confide is to offer a weapon, a whispered fear, a hidden hope, a moment of vulnerability. These can be collected, stored, and used later with devastating precision. A careless word repeated to the wrong ear, a confidence twisted into something treacherous. You learn to hold your tongue. You learn to keep your own counsel, your dreams, your fears, your memories of sun-warmed earth and mulberry leaves. These you lock away deep inside, beneath layers of powder and the practiced curve of a closed-lip smile. They are yours alone, precious and dangerous. The jealousy is not the hot, furious kind of stories. It's colder, deeper, a slow, insidious frost that creeps into the heart, born of shared desperation. Each woman knows her value diminishes with every passing season, with every new, younger face carried through the vermilion gates in a red palanquin. Each knows that bearing a son is the only hope of rising above the suffocating anonymity, the only shield against the slow decay into the forgotten ones in the cold pavilions. The emperor's favor is a finite resource, a single drop of water in a desert of longing. To see another sip, even a tiny one, is a personal drought. So, the quiet wars continue. A borrowed embroidery hoop returned with the silk mysteriously snagged. A carefully tended potted orchid near a window ledge that somehow catches a fatal draught overnight. A rumor, started by who knows who, whispered, just loud enough to reach the matron's sharp ears, about a concubine's family being implicated in some distant minor scandal. A rumor that might see her name quietly omitted from the next selection list. It's a world of soft footsteps and softer daggers, where a broken comb or a bitter herb in your tea are not accidents, but declarations. They are the only weapons available in a gilded cage, wielded by hands trembling with fear and painted with the serene mask of submission. The quietest wars are waged without swords, fought in the space between heartbeats, beneath the scent of jasmine and the crushing weight of shared, unspoken despair. You smooth your robe, adjust your smile in the mirror, and step into the day. Another porcelain soldier in a silent, beautiful, and utterly ruthless army. It comes not with fanfare, but with a stillness so profound it feels like the world has stopped breathing. The hour is late. The chimes a distant memory swallowed by the deep velvet dark pressing against the paper windows. You are not asleep. Sleep is a luxury rarely granted easily in this place of waiting. You are lying on your thin mat, staring at the familiar cracks in the ceiling plaster, tracing their paths like rivers on a map to nowhere. The faint scent of the jasmine sachet beneath your pillow, usually a small comfort, tonight smells cloying, suffocating. Then, a sound. Not the expected cough. A soft, almost hesitant tap-tap on the wooden frame of your sliding door. Like a bird pecking at ice. Your body goes rigid. Every muscle locks. The air vanishes from your lungs. Around you, the other women lie motionless on their mats, but you feel the collective tightening, the sudden, shared awareness like a current passing through the still room. No one moves, no one speaks, but the silence now is charged, electric with dread and envy. The door slides open. A fraction, not enough to reveal more than a sliver of the corridor's gloom. The face that appears is not the stern matron's, nor the assessing senior eunuch's. It's a younger eunuch, his features pale and indistinct in the weak light of the single oil lamp burning low in the corner of the room. His eyes, wide and dark, sweep the dim space and find yours. They hold no warmth, no malice, only a weary kind of duty. He doesn't speak your name. He doesn't need to. His gaze is the summons. He merely nods, once a small, grave dip of his chin. Now the paralysis breaks. You move as if pulled by strings. Your limbs feel numb, distant, not your own. You rise from the mat, the thin blanket falling away. You don't look at the others. You can feel their eyes, though like phantom touches on your back, heavy with unspoken things, pity, resentment, a terrible kind of curiosity. The cold stone floor bites through the thin soles of your sleeping slippers as you pad silently to the door. The young eunuch steps back, holding a single paper lantern. Its flame, caged within, casts a small, trembling pool of light on the worn stone flags, pushing back the darkness only a few hesitant steps at a time. He turns without a word and begins to walk. You follow your footsteps, whispering against the stone, absurdly loud in the cavernous silence. The corridor stretches endlessly, swallowed by shadows beyond the lantern's frail reach. High above, the ceiling beams are lost in gloom. The air is cold, damp, smelling of ancient dust, mildew, and the faint, lingering ghost of sandalwood from incense burned hours, maybe days, ago. It smells like the inside of a sealed tomb. The eunuch's grey robes make no sound as he glides ahead, a silent spectre leading you deeper into the heart of the sleeping beast. You pass doorways, dark and closed. You cross small moonlit courtyards where unseen fountains drip a monotonous rhythm onto cold stone, the sound echoing like slow, measured tears. Statues loom in the shadows, mythical beasts, immortal guardians, their stone eyes seeming to follow your passage. The lantern flame gutters in a sudden draft, sending frantic shadows leaping up the walls before settling again. Your heart hammers against your ribs, a frantic bird battering its cage. You focus on the small circle of light bobbing ahead, on the rhythmic sway of the eunuch's shoulders. Breathe, just breathe. But each breath feels shallow, insufficient, caught high in your throat. Finally, he stops before a different door. Larger, heavier, bound with dark iron. It's unmarked, indistinguishable from a dozen others you've passed. Yet it radiates a different kind of silence, a waiting silence. The eunuch sets the lantern down on a small stone ledge beside the door. He doesn't knock. He doesn't announce you. He simply turns to you, his expression still that blank mask of duty. Then, with movements both practiced and impersonal, he unfolds a large square of thick, unbleached silk he had been carrying folded under his arm. It smells faintly of cedarwood and something medicinal, camphor perhaps. Without ceremony, without meeting your eyes, he wraps it around you, not like a shawl, like a shroud. He tucks it firmly, efficiently, around your body, pinning your arms loosely at your sides. You are swaddled, immobilized from the neck down, a parcel ready for delivery. The rough texture scrapes against the fine silk of your sleeping robe. The smell of cedar fills your nostrils, sharp and clean, masking the damp stone scent. He lifts you. It's not difficult. You are light, insubstantial in your wrappings. His arms are strong, impersonal. He carries you as one might carry a rolled carpet or a sacrificial offering. The heavy door swings open silently from within, revealing only deeper darkness. The eunuch carries you across the threshold. The air changes instantly. It's warmer here, thick with the heavy, cloying scent of imperial incense, dragons, blood resin, and something sweet, like plum blossoms, stewed in honey. It's a smell that coats the back of your throat, dense and oppressive. The room is vast, the ceiling lost in shadows. The only light comes from a few low braziers glowing dull red in corners, and a cluster of candles burning steadily on a low table far across the room, their light barely penetrating the gloom near the entrance. The candlelight falls on rich tapestries depicting swirling dragons on dark, lacquered furniture. On the edge of an enormous bed draped in layers of deep crimson and gold silk, it falls, too, on a figure seated near the candles, his back mostly to you, bent over a low table scattered with scrolls. The emperor, he doesn't turn, he doesn't acknowledge your entry. He gives no sign he's aware of the eunuch depositing his bundled burden onto the edge of the vast bed. The young eunuch sets you down with the same impersonal care one might place a fragile vase. He bows low, deeply, towards the figure at the table, then retreats backwards, melting through the doorway like smoke. The heavy door clicks shut behind him, sealing you in. Silence. Thicker now, hotter, perfumed. The incense smoke curls lazily in the dim light. The candles flicker, their flames casting long, dancing shadows that seem to writhe on the tapestried walls. You sit rigidly upright on the edge of the bed, the rough silk shroud still wrapped tightly around you, pinning your arms. Your heart is a trapped thing, fluttering wildly against the constricting fabric. You stare at the embroidered canopy above the bed, intricate phoenixes intertwined with clouds, stitched in gold and scarlet thread that glints dully in the candlelight. The patterns swim before your eyes. He still hasn't moved. The son of heaven, the dragon, your husband, in the eyes of the state. He wears simple sleeping robes of dark blue silk, his hair unbound, falling over his shoulders. The candlelight illuminates only the curve of his shoulder, the line of his jaw, the back of his neck. It shows only part of his face in profile, an eyebrow, the slope of a nose, the corner of a mouth that seems neither smiling nor frowning, simply set. He is reading, or perhaps writing, his brush moving with slow deliberation over the scroll. Before him, the scratch of the bristles on the paper is the only sound, absurdly loud in the waiting silence. Time stretches, elastic and agonizing. Minutes, hours, you don't know. You hold your breath until spots dance before your eyes, then force yourself to take tiny, silent sips of the insensivy air. You stare at the phoenixes until their wings blur. You are a statue wrapped in rough silk, perched on the edge of the imperial bed. Eventually, the scratching stops. He sets the brush down carefully in its jade rest. He doesn't look at you. He rises from the low table, his movements fluid, unhurried. He stretches, a slow, languid motion, then turns. The candlelight now falls more fully on his face. He is not old, but neither is he young. His face is smooth, unreadable, handsome in a cold, carved way. His eyes, when they finally settle on you, are dark, fathomless pools. They hold no warmth, no curiosity, no flicker of desire. They are the eyes of a man assessing an object delivered to his chamber. He walks towards the bed, his steps silent. On the thick carpets, the scent of the incense intensifies, mingling with a faint, clean smell of sandalwood soap from his skin. He stops before you. He doesn't speak. You don't ask questions. What would you ask? What could you say? Your voice feels locked away, buried deep beneath the rough silk and the pounding terror. He reaches out, not to touch your face, your hair. His hand goes to the tucked edge of the silk shroud. With a single, deft movement, he pulls the tucked end free. The fabric loosens, slumping around your shoulders. He doesn't unwrap you further. He simply turns away, walking towards a screen in the corner. You understand. The shroud is removed. The rest is your duty. The night unfolds not with passion, but with a terrible, silent efficiency. It is a transaction recorded in the Jing Shi Fang, a duty performed under the watchful gaze of embroidered phoenixes. His touch is not cruel, but impersonal, methodical. There is no tenderness, no shared breath, no meeting of eyes. He doesn't kiss you. He doesn't speak your name. The candlelight shows only fragments. The strong line of his shoulder, the fall of dark hair against the crimson pillow, the distant, focused expression on his face, as if concentrating on a complex state matter. You close your eyes. You retreat, deep inside yourself, to the place where the scent of mulberry leaves still lingers, where the sun was warm on your neck. You become the rough silk shroud discarded on the floor, the smoke curling towards the ceiling, the distant drip of the fountain in the courtyard. Anything but the body lying stiffly on the imperial bed, performing its function. The only sounds are the rustle of silk, the soft sigh of the mattress, the occasional crackle from a brazier, and your own heartbeat. A frantic drumbeat muffled by layers of dread and detachment. You stare at the canopy through slitted eyes, tracing the same golden wing over and over until it loses all meaning afterwards. There is no lingering touch, no shared silence that speaks of connection. He simply rises. He walks back to the screen without a backward glance, disappearing behind it. You hear the soft splash of water in a basin. You lie perfectly still, staring at the canopy, the rough imprint of the sheets against your skin, a deep, hollow ache settling in your bones, deeper than any physical sensation. The silence now is absolute, heavy as lead. It presses down, thick with the scent of incense and exertion and something else. Something vaguely metallic, like old coins or shame. You feel raw, exposed, utterly empty. Time passes. You don't move. Eventually, the young eunuch reappears, silent as a ghost. He doesn't look at you. He gathers the discarded silk shroud from the floor. He gestures, a small, sharp movement. Up. You move stiffly, your limbs protesting. He wraps the rough silk. Around you again, less carefully this time, just enough to cover the fine robe beneath. He lifts you, the same impersonal bundle. The door opens. The corridor air, cold and damp, feels like a slap after the perfumed heat. He carries you back the way you came, the single lantern bobbing, its light feeble against the oppressive dark. The dripping fountain, the stone guardians, the endless corridors, they all blur into a nightmare landscape. You are carried past the closed door of the women's quarters. He doesn't stop. He takes you further, to a small, cold antechamber you've never seen before. He sets you down on a hard wooden bench. He leaves the lantern on the floor and vanishes. You sit in the near darkness, shivering despite the rough silk, the scent of cedar now mingling nauseatingly with the lingering imperial perfume and the metallic temps of your own fear. The hollow ache is everywhere. A different kind of silence reigns here. The silence of aftermath, of being discarded. Later, how much later, an older woman arrives, her face impassive. She carries a basin of warm water and clean cloths. Without a word, she helps you wash, her touch brisk, clinical. She hands you a fresh sleeping robe, plain and unadorned. She doesn't meet your eyes. She simply gestures back towards the women's quarters. Your return journey is alone, your footsteps echoing in the empty corridor, a lonely counterpoint to the distant, indifferent chime marking some unknown hour before the dawn. You slide the door to your shared room open as silently as possible. The others are still, or perhaps pretending to be. You slip onto your thin mat, pulling the blanket over your head, facing the cold wall. You were sore in ways you didn't know possible. You were voiceless, your throat tight with unshed tears and the bitter residue of incense. The scent of the palace, stone, decay, sandalwood, and now, irrevocably, the cloying sweetness of the dragon's chamber clings to your skin, your hair, your very breath. It is your first night. It tastes of silence and rough silk and the profound emptiness of a duty performed. You lie very still, waiting for the numbness to claim you, while the embroidered phoenixes from a distant ceiling swirl behind your closed eyelids. The silence after that first night wasn't emptiness anymore. It became a different kind of waiting, a heavier stillness. The days blurred into the familiar rhythm of the women's quarters, the pre-dawn rising, the communal ablutions in tepid water, the meticulous application of powder and paint that felt less like adornment and more like armor, the shared meals, the endless embroidery, the hushed whispers that slithered like cold snakes through the perfumed air. But beneath the surface sameness, something shifted. Inside you, it starts subtly, a wave of dizziness catching you off guard, as you kneel to thread a needle, forcing you to brace a hand against the cool stone floor, the grit pressing into your palm. A sudden, overwhelming aversion to the scent of the braised pork served at midday, a dish you once found comforting, now sending a surge of nausea so violent you have to clamp your lips shut. Swallowing convulsively, the taste of bile sharp and metallic at the back of your throat. The familiar, cloying sweetness of the jasmine sachet beneath your pillow now smells suffocating, triggering a cold sweat that beads on your upper lip. Your body, usually obedient, a vessel trained for stillness, begins to whisper its own secrets, secrets you dare not name, secrets you are terrified to hope for. You feel it. Not a quickening yet, not a flutter, but a profound internal change. A heaviness settling low in your belly, unfamiliar and insistent. A tenderness in your breasts that makes the brush of silk against your skin feel like sandpaper, a bone deep. Weariness that descends in the afternoons, making your eyelids leaden, your limbs heavy as stone, forcing you to fight to keep your head upright over your embroidery frame. The palace air, always thick with incense and damp, feels denser, harder to draw into your lungs. You catch yourself staring blankly at the intricate pattern of a phoenix wing you're stitching, the crimson thread blurring before your eyes, lost not in thought, but in the sheer, overwhelming effort of simply being present within this changing vessel. Hope is a dangerous, flickering candle in this gilded tomb. You smother it instantly. It could be anything. The strange palace food, the constant tension, a passing illness. To hope is to invite the crushing weight of disappointment, a weight you fear would shatter your already fragile composure. Worse, to hope visibly is to paint a target on your back. You see the eyes, oh, you see them. The other women, their painted faces, serene masks, their watchful gazes sharper than ever. Does consort Wen's glance linger a fraction too long on the untouched plate you push away? Does Lady's use perfectly sculpted eyebrow arch almost imperceptibly when you stifle a yawn? Does May, sitting beside you, seem to lean slightly away, as if your potential condition was somehow contagious, or worse, a threat? The air crackles with unspoken observation. A missed stitch, a moment of pallor, a hand pressed unconsciously to your belly. These are the new battlegrounds. Scrutinized with lethal intensity, you become hyper-aware of your own body, every shift, every twinge. You move with exaggerated care, avoiding sudden turns, steadying yourself against walls or furniture that suddenly seems treacherously distant. You force yourself to eat small, bland portions, fighting the nausea, knowing any significant change in habit will be noted. You practice your painted smile more diligently, ensuring it hides the fatigue, the gnawing anxiety, the treacherous spark of hope you cannot entirely extinguish. You are a fortress under silent siege, guarding the most precious, dangerous secret within your own walls. The summons comes not from a eunuch at the door, but from the matron herself, her obsidian ship eyes narrowing as she observes you during the morning dressing ritual. She doesn't speak to you directly. She murmurs something to an attendant, who glides away silently. Later that day, they arrive. The imperial physicians, their presence in the women's quarters is a rare and ominous event. The blue-robed men move with their usual detached gravity, but their focus is palpable. The room empties, as if by unspoken command, the other women, melting away with barely a rustle of silk, leaving you alone with them and the senior matron, who stands watchful as a stone guardian. The air chills instantly, thick with the scent of herbs clinging to their robes. Sharp ginseng, bitter ginseng, the dusty sweetness of dried longan fruit. The examination is a repeat of the selection ritual, yet infinitely more terrifying. The same cold fingers on your pulse. But now the physician's brow furrows in intense concentration, his eyes distant, listening not just to the rhythm, but to the hidden tides within. He consults not just your body, but the celestial charts, whispered by his own internal calculations. The older female physician's probing hands are more insistent, mapping the subtle changes in your flesh, her bird claw fingers pressing deep below your navel, seeking confirmation. They exchanged low murmurs, words like "who am I," the slippery, pulse and Z-key, the harmonious energy that mean nothing to you, yet everything. They examine your tongue, your eyes, the color high or low on your cheeks beneath the powder. The silence in the room is absolute, broken only by the faint rasp of their breathing and the hammering of your own heart. A frantic drumbeat against the cage of your ribs. You stare at a water stain on the ceiling, focusing on its jagged edges, trying to float away from the violation, the scrutiny, the unbearable suspense. Finally, the senior physician turns to the matron. He gives a single, slow nod. A profound stillness follows, deeper than before. The matron's expression doesn't change, yet something shifts in her eyes. A calculation, a reassessment. She dips her chin in acknowledgement. The pronouncement isn't jubilant. It's delivered with the solemnity of a state edict. The dragon seed has taken root. The words hang in the air, heavy and irrevocable. Taken root, like a crop planted in imperial soil. Your body is the field. You feel no surge of joy, only a wave of dizzying relief instantly followed by a deeper, colder wave of terror. You are no longer just you. You are a vessel carrying dynastic hope. A target. Changes begin immediately, swift and impersonal. Your simple sleeping mat is replaced with a slightly wider, thicker one. Your meals arrive on your tray, subtly altered bland kanjis, steamed fish, broths fragrant with angelica root and dates, tonics that taste of earth and metal, prescribed not for you, but for the precious burden you carry. A young, silent maid is assigned specifically to you, her eyes perpetually downcast, her purpose clear: to watch, to serve, to report. You are moved to a slightly larger room, still shared, but with a sliver more space, a gesture that feels less like privilege and more like isolation. The other women's painted smiles grow tighter, their eyes colder. The air hums with a new kind of tension, sharp as broken glass. The midwives appear next, older women with hands like worn leather, smelling of dried herbs and camphor. They speak in low, soothing tones that do nothing to soothe. They instruct you on breathing, on posture, on forbidden foods and activities. They massage your feet with warm oils, their touch practical, not comforting. They listen to your belly with curious, hollow tubes made of bamboo, their faces intent, searching for the whisper of a tiny heartbeat you cannot yet feel. Strong, one murmurs approvingly after a long moment of listening, her ear pressed to the tube. The word is meant to reassure. It only terrifies you more. Strong meant valuable. Valuable meant coveted. Vulnerable. The terror is a constant companion, cold and slithering. It coils in your belly alongside the new life, a poisonous twin. Every step on the polished floors feels treacherous. A sudden draft from an open screen makes you flinch, imagining the cold wind the midwives warn against, believed to threaten the fragile spark within. You eye the stone steps leading to the small courtyard garden with suspicion, remembering the matron's offhand remark about consort Anne years ago, who slipped during her 3rd month. You sip the prescribed tonics with dread, wondering if the bitter aftertaste is ginseng or something else, something slipped by hands unseen. Was that a knowing glance between 2 serving girls delivering your tray? Did the maid linger a moment, too long, near your discarded robe? The child, not your child, not yet. But the dragon's seed, the potential heir, becomes your entire world, a fragile universe contained within the cage of your ribs. Its survival is your only purpose, your only shield, your only path to something beyond being discarded. You feel its presence in the relentless fatigue, the persistent nausea, the strange deep ache that isn't pain but profound change. You cradle your lower belly unconsciously when you think no one is looking, a protective gesture born of instinctive fear. You talk to it in the deepest silence of the night, whispering promises you have no power to keep into the darkness. Promises of safety, of life, of a future you cannot envision. Grow strong, you murmur, the words featherlight against your own skin. Grow strong, survive. Because you understand the brutal equation with chilling clarity. The child must survive, or you are nothing again. Less than nothing. A field that failed its harvest. A vessel returned to the shelf, cracked and useless, destined only for the slow, cold decay of the forgotten pavilion. The dragon's seed is both your salvation and your sentence, a fragile hope blooming in the shadow of the executioner's blade. You carry it, and the crushing weight of an empire's expectation. Within your trembling, powdered skin, the air in your slightly larger room feels different now, thicker, heavier, not just with the cloying scent of the strengthening tonics. The maid brings brews smelling of earthworms and iron filings that coat your tongue and settle like lead in your stomach, but with a new, pervasive awareness. It's as if the very dust motes dancing in the thin shafts of afternoon light hold their breath. The other women move around you with exaggerated care, their painted smiles brittle as eggshell, their eyes flickering towards you and then swiftly away, as if even a lingering glance could be misconstrued. The midwives come more frequently, their leathery hands palpating your belly with impersonal thoroughness, their whispers about ki and meridians sounding like incantations. The imperial physician visits once a fortnight, his pulse taking longer, his gaze more penetrating, his notations on the ivory tablet more numerous. Yet, beneath this sudden, suffocating layer of attention, there is a deeper current, a colder, more absolute presence. It hangs over everything, unseen but felt in every hushed conversation, every averted gaze, every carefully measured portion of ginseng root in your broth. The Empress watches. She doesn't need to be present. Her power is woven into the fabric of the Forbidden City, as intrinsic as the vermilion paint on the walls, the yellow glaze on the roof tiles. You have never seen her close, only glimpses, a distant figure seated high on a dais during a rare, formal gathering in an outer courtyard, a blur of imperial yellow and intricate gold embroidery swallowed by the vast space between you. A silhouette passing behind a screen of sheer silk in a corridor you weren't meant to be near, surrounded by a silent phalanx of attendants whose eyes scanned the surroundings like hunting hawks. She is less a woman, more an embodiment of celestial authority, a distant gilded peak perpetually wreathed in the rarefied air of absolute power. She never speaks your name. Why would she? You are a temporary vessel, one among many, a name on a physician's scroll, a potential disturbance in the meticulously ordered hierarchy she presides over. Her name, however, is whispered everywhere, wrapped in layers of reverence and bone-deep fear. Empress Zhonggong, the Central Palace. Her word is law, her displeasure a sentence passed without trial. She holds the keys not just to the inner chambers, but to the fates of every soul dwelling within them, especially those whose wombs might challenge the delicate equilibrium of her world. The knowledge settles upon you like a physical weight, compressing your lungs. Your value, your newfound, fragile protection, is also your greatest vulnerability. You carry potential. Potential that could elevate you or shatter you. Potential that inherently challenges the Empress's preeminent position as the mother of the realm, the first wife, the undisputed source of legitimate heirs. To bear a son, the thought is both exhilarating and terrifying. It could mean elevation to consort, perhaps even higher, a life of relative comfort, influence, protection. For your child, it could also mean painting the brightest target imaginable on your back and on the tiny life stirring within you. The Empress watches. Her gaze is felt through intermediaries, through the subtle shifts in protocol that ripple through the women's quarters, like tremors before an earthquake. A gift arrives one morning, not for you directly, but bestowed upon the entire wing to commemorate some minor celestial event. Silken handkerchiefs, exquisitely embroidered. Yours, however, bears a motif subtly different from the others. While most show harmless sparrows or plum blossoms, yours depicts a single, perfect lotus blossom. Beautiful, serene, yet the lotus, you recall with a chill from overheard whispers, was the Empress's personal symbol before she ascended. Is it a reminder, a subtle claiming, a warning that even this burgeoning life within you ultimately belongs under her shadow? You fold the handkerchief carefully, your fingers trembling, and place it at the bottom of your small chest, unused. The midwife assigned to you, a woman named Lao, when, with eyes like chips of flint, becomes more vocal in her pronouncements. The Empress, she murmurs one afternoon while massaging your swollen ankles with warm sesame oil. Her touch firm, almost painful, takes great interest in the health of the dragon's seed. She has decreed only the finest ingredients for your tonics. The words are meant to soothe, perhaps. They feel like ice water trickling down your spine. Great interest. Does it mean benevolent oversight or constant surveillance? Does it mean the herbs in your daily brew are truly fortifying, or are they subtly calibrated, monitored for effect under her unblinking celestial gaze? You sip the next dose, the bitterness now laced with a new layer of dread. You learn the language of her influence, the sudden appearance of a senior eunuch from the Zhonggong at the physician's elbow during your examination. His expressionless face observing, the pulse taking, listening to the murmured reports. The way the matron, usually stern but predictable, seems to hesitate for a fraction of a second before granting your request for an extra hour of rest. Her eyes darting towards the north, towards the Empress's distant quarters, as if seeking silent permission. The subtle shift in the other concubine's behavior when a gift does arrive specifically for you. A basket of rare winter melons from the imperial hothouses. The painted smiles remain, but the eyes harden and the silence that follows is brittle, charged with an envy now tinged with something more dangerous. The awareness that you have drawn the gaze of the sun, and the sun can nurture, but it can also scorch. The Empress watches. Her power manifests in the absence of overt threat, in the suffocating blanket of protocol and expectation. You understand, with a clarity that chills you to the core, that you cannot outshine her. Not in presence, not in influence, not even in the potential of your womb. Any sign of presumption, any whisper of ambition attributed to you, any perceived slight, however unintentional, could be your undoing. A concubine who grew too bold, too confident in her pregnancy years ago, consort Liang, wasn't it, was suddenly found to have offended against palace decorum. She was demoted, sent to the cold palaces before her child was even born. The child, a son, was given to a lesser consort to raise. Consort Liang was never seen again. The story is told in hushed tones, a chilling parable. Her fate wasn't sealed by a dramatic accusation, but by a single word from the Empress, uttered in the quiet sanctum of her audience chamber. A word that shifted a life, a destiny, like dust brushed from an imperial robe. One afternoon, while taking cautious, measured steps in the small, walled garden attached to your wing, a privilege granted due to your condition, you feel it. A prickle on the back of your neck. The unsettling sensation of being observed. You stop, your hand instinctively cradling the subtle swell beneath your robe. You look up, scanning the high walls, the covered walkways above. There is no one visible, just the blank eyes of latticed windows, the silent guardianship of carved stone beasts on the eaves. Yet the feeling persists, intense and unnerving. Is it paranoia, born of constant fear, or is it the truth? Does a silhouette stand behind one of those dark lattice screens, observing your solitary progress, noting your posture, the color in your cheeks, the protective curve of your hand? The Empress, or one of her countless unseen eyes? The sun feels cold on your skin despite its brightness. The carefully tended peonies in their stone pots seem too red, too vibrant, almost accusatory. The scent of the damp earth, usually a small comfort, smells like turned graves. You turn and walk slowly back towards your room, each step measured, careful, painfully aware of the potential gaze following you. You feel exposed, not just physically, but existentially. Your worth, your safety, your child's future hang, suspended in the space between the Empress's celestial indifference and her potential displeasure. You are a piece on the grand board of the inner court, and her hand hovers, serene and absolute, capable of moving you, protecting you, or sweeping you aside with the same effortless grace. Back in your room, you sit by the small brazier, the meager warmth doing little to dispel the chill that has settled deep within your bones. You look down at your hands, resting lightly on your belly. The tiny flutter you felt just yesterday, a sensation like a trapped moth beating its wings against silk, seems impossibly fragile now. A spark of life adrift in a vast, gilded ocean, watched over by an impassive, golden moon. The Empress watches. Her silence is the loudest sound in the Forbidden City. Her unseen presence is the heaviest weight you carry, and you understand, with a weariness that seeps into your marrow, that your fate, and the fate of the life you nurture, rests not on the whims of the Emperor who planted the seed, but on the quiet, implacable will of the woman who sits at the center of this intricate, suffocating web. One word from her, spoken or unspoken, and the ground beneath your feet, already treacherous, could vanish entirely, leaving you and your fragile hope falling into the silent, bottomless dark. The promise of care becomes a cage, a gilded, fragrant cage lined with silk pillows and steaming bowls, but a cage nonetheless. The moment the dragon's seed took root, your body ceased to be your own. It became imperial property, a state project, a delicate vessel holding dynastic potential, subject to relentless scrutiny and intervention. The air in your slightly larger room, already thick with watchfulness, now permanently smells of medicine, a complex, cloying fug of dried herbs, roasting minerals, and the underlying metallic temps of fear. The imperial physicians are no longer occasional visitors. They are fixtures. Their somber blue robes seem to absorb the dim light, their presence a cold pressure in the small space. They come bearing not comfort, but scrolls, long lists of prescriptions, dietary regimens, prohibitions, and procedures. Their language is a river of terms flowing over your head. Yang Su, yin, deficiency, stagnant blood, rebellious qi, words that translate, in the harsh reality of your skin, to constant discomfort, strange cravings, and a body subjected to rituals that feel less like healing and more like violation. The tonics arrive first. Thrice daily, the silent maid presents a small, covered porcelain bowl. The steam that rises carries scents that make your stomach clench even before the first sip. The musty sweetness of dried longan fruit, the earthy punch of dang gooey root, the unsettlingly animal musk of powdered deer antler velvet, and always, beneath it all, the unmistakable iron bite of turtle shell calcined to grey ash. For strength, Lao Wen, the midwife, states flatly as she watches you drink, her flinty eyes noting every grimace. For the blood, the concoction coats your tongue, thick and cloying, settling in your stomach like warm sludge. It leaves a persistent metallic taste, as if you've been sucking on old coins. Sometimes, minutes after drinking, a wave of dizziness crashes over you, forcing you to grip the edge of your low table until the world steadies. No one asks if you consent. Consent is irrelevant. Your body's purpose is defined. Then come the needles, fine filaments of silver and gold, glinting ominously in the lamplight. The physician's hands are steady, precise, impersonal. He doesn't explain where they will go or why. He simply gestures for you to lie back, your robe parted to expose your ankles, your wrists, the pale skin of your lower belly tautening. Now with the life beneath, the initial prick is sharp, surprising. Then comes the deeper ache as the needle is twisted, seeking the elusive key pathway. He inserts them at points you cannot see, below your navel, along the inside of your shins, into the fleshy web between thumb and forefinger. A constellation of cold, sharp pain blooms across your skin. You lie perfectly still, staring at the ceiling, focusing on the water stain's familiar shape, trying to detach from the strange, invasive sensation of energy being tugged, redirected, or blocked deep within your core. The needles remain, humming with a subtle vibration you feel in your bones, for what feels like an eternity. When they are finally withdrawn, tiny beads of blood well up, dark against your pallor, quickly dabbed away by the physician's attendant. The points throb dully for hours afterwards. Moxibustion follows. Dried mugwort, rolled into tight cones, is lit and held agonizingly close to your skin, the same points where the needles pierced, or sometimes the small of your back. The heat is intense, searing, leaving angry red marks that linger for days. The acrid, smoky smell of burning mugwort fills the room, clinging to your hair, your robes, adding another layer to the medicinal fug. To warm the womb Lao when intones, watching the glowing tip hover near your skin. To dispel cold, you bite your lip until you taste blood, forcing back whimpers. The heat feels less like warmth and more like branding. The worst is the bleeding. Not the natural, dreaded loss of the seed, but the prescribed bleeding. One morning, the senior physician arrives with a small, lacquered case. Inside, nestled in velvet, lie gleaming, razor-sharp lancets shaped like miniature crescent moons. His expression is grave, focused. Excess heat in the blood, he murmurs, more to himself than to you, his fingers pressing hard against the pulse. Point in your inner elbow must be purged for balance. For the child, panic claws its way up your throat. You want to shrink away, to pull your arm back, to scream. But the matron stands nearby, her gaze implacable. The silent maid hovers. Resistance is unthinkable. Futile, he chooses a spot high on your inner arm, where the skin is thin, blue veins visible beneath the surface. He swabs it with cold vinegar that stings. The lancet flashes in the grey light. The cut is swift, deep. Not a scratch, but a deliberate incision. Dark blood wells immediately, thick and slow at first, then flowing faster in a steady, crimson stream. It drips into a small, white jade bowl held beneath your arm. The sight of your own life force leaving your body, measured drop by drop into cold stone, sends a wave of icy terror through you. The dizziness returns, stronger this time, accompanied by a cold sweat that breaks out across your forehead and back. The physician watches the flow, his face impassive, occasionally murmuring observations to his attendant, who scribbles frantically. He seems satisfied only when the bowl holds a significant amount, a dark pool shimmering under the lamplight. The bleeding slows. He presses a wad of herbs to the wound, binding it tightly with clean cloth. Your arm throbs, your head swims. A profound weakness settles into your limbs, a hollow, emptied feeling that goes beyond physical blood loss. Lao when bustles forward as the physicians pack their gleaming tools. She pats your good arm, her touch rough. There, she says, her voice devoid of actual comfort. See, not so bad. The heat is lessened now. The Emperor will be pleased. She smiles, a thin stretching of lips over worn teeth. A strong purge ensures a strong child. It is for the best. The Emperor will be pleased. The words echo in the hollow. Space left by your blood. They land with the weight of a stone. Your suffering, your violation, your profound weakness. These are not tragedies. They are necessary steps. Contributions to the celestial project housed within you. Your misery is a metric of successful care. The bitter tonics, the searing moxa, the draining lancets, they are not torments, but honors bestowed upon the vessel chosen to bear the dragon's heir. The poison is in the care itself. It is the reduction of your being to a biological system requiring constant, often brutal, adjustment. It is the erasure of your fear, your pain, your very personhood, beneath the imperative of producing a healthy, imperial offspring. You close your eyes. The scent of blood, metallic, intimate, terrifying, mixes with the lingering mugwort smoke and the cloying herbs. The throbbing in your arm is a constant, painful reminder. The weakness makes your limbs feel like water. You want to weep. You want to rage. But the energy for either has been leached out with your blood. Instead, a profound numbness spreads, colder than the stone floor. You drift, not into sleep, but into a detached space behind your eyes. You float above the aching body on the mat, above the room smelling of pain and procedure, above the watchful eyes of the physician, the matron, the maid. You float back to the riverbank behind your village, the scent of wet earth and green reeds, the sun warm on your bare arms. The only blood you knew then was a scraped knee, tended by your mother's worried hands. The memory is hazy, distant, a tiny raft in a vast, dark sea of medicinal misery. You cling to it, this phantom scent of sun-warmed earth, as the reality of your body, a battlefield of folk medicine and imperial hope, recedes into a dull, aching roar. The poison of care courses through your veins, a chilling antidote to the fragile life you carry. You close your eyes tighter, retreating into the fragile sanctuary of that sunlit riverbank. letting the numbness claim you, while the silent maid begins cleaning the jade bowl of your blood. Time, measured by the relentless chimes and the slow turn of seasons painted on the palace walls, becomes a different kind of thief. It steals not in grand gestures, but in infinitesimal increments. One day, you realize the imperial physicians no longer come. The lacquered case, with its gleaming lancets, the pouches of pungent herbs, the acrid scent of moxa smoke, they have vanished from your small, slightly larger room like a fever dream receding. The silent maid assigned during your pregnancy was quietly reassigned months ago. Your meals returned to the standard fare: simple kanji, pickled vegetables, steamed buns served on the same lacquered tray as everyone else. No extra portions, no fortifying broths smelling of iron and earthworm. The tonics cease. The absence of their bitter weight on your tongue is a relief, yet it carries its own emptiness. A cessation of care that feels like abandonment. The child, a daughter, small but fierce, with eyes like dark pools reflecting the flickering lamplight, was taken from you before her first moon cycle ended. Swaddled in imperial yellow silk, she was carried away by stern-faced nurses to the dedicated nursery pavilions, to be raised by appointed caregivers under the Empress's distant, all-seeing gaze. You were granted a brief audience every 10 days, a ritual as stiff and formal as a court ceremony. You would kneel, your forehead pressed to the cool floor, then be permitted to gaze upon her tiny face for precisely the time it took a stick of incense to burn halfway. You memorized the curve of her cheek, the flutter of her eyelashes, the impossible softness of her fist curled against the embroidered blanket. You were not allowed to hold her, not allowed to speak her name aloud within those gilded walls. She was princess, you were the birth mother, a biological footnote in the official records. Then the nurses would bow, the audience would end, and you would be led away. The scent of milk and baby powder clinging to your robes like a ghost, fading with each step back to your own quarters. The summons never came again. Not for the emperor's bedchamber. Your name faded from the roster scrolls, erased as quietly as a scribe's brushstroke corrected. The red palanquins brought new girls, younger faces, flushed with the terror and naive hope you once wore, arrived in waves. Their silk was brighter, their eyes wider, their movements still unburdened by the deep weariness that now lives in your bones. You watched them arrive, these replacements carried past the vermilion gates you entered a lifetime ago. You see the same confusion, the same fear masked by painted serenity reflected in their eyes. You see yourself, a ghost haunting your own. Past, your place shifts, literally. Your slightly larger room near the center of the women's wing is needed for a newly promoted consort. Favored after a single summons, you are moved. Not to the dreaded cold palaces, not yet, but to the periphery, the North Pavilion. The name itself holds a chill. It's a quieter wing, further from the main courtyards, further from the invisible currents of power and favor. The corridors here are narrower, dimmer. The air smells more strongly of damp stone and neglect. The sweet perfume of incense, a fainter memory. Your room is smaller again, facing north, receiving only the thin, weak sunlight of late afternoon. Frost patterns bloom beautifully on the inside of the paper window panes in winter. The plaster on the walls is cracked in unfamiliar patterns. You live among the echoes. The other women here wear the same painted masks, but the powder sits thicker, struggling to fill lines etched by time and disappointment. Their smiles are rarer. Their eyes hold a flat, resigned sheen, like tarnished silver. Conversations are sparser, often just observations about the weather or the quality of the rice. The fierce, silent wars of the main quarters seem distant, here replaced by a pervasive, shared lethargy. Ambition has bled out, leaving behind a quiet pool of acceptance, tinged with the faint, sour sediment of regret. You share the draughts that whistle through ill-fitting doors in winter, the oppressive stillness of the summer heat trapped within the thick walls, the pervasive smell of camphor, used to keep moths from aging silks no one wears anymore. Your hands, however, find purpose, needlework, not the intricate phoenixes and dragons for imperial robes anymore, but simpler tasks, mending, darning frayed hems on the robes of younger concubines you never speak to, stitching plain undergarments, embroidering tiny slippers for infants you will never know, destined for nursery pavilions far from your chilly room. The silk is coarser, the threads less vibrant. Your fingers, once trembling with anticipation or fear, now move with a steady, automatic rhythm born of repetition. You sit for hours by the small brazier, its heat barely reaching your knees, the needle flashing in the dim light, pulling thread through fabric worn thin by other forgotten hands. The repetitive motion is a kind of meditation, a way to fill the vast, empty spaces of the day. You stitch robes for others, wait, and remember, the memories are your companions, now, more vivid than the women sharing your drafty pavilion. They surface unbidden, triggered by the smallest things. The scent of wet stone after rain transports you instantly to the jade corridors on the night of your first summons, the rough silk shroud scratching your skin, the bitter aftertaste of medicinal broth, long absent, suddenly coats your tongue again, phantom and cloying. The sound of a young girl's stifled giggle from a distant courtyard brings back the crushing weight of the selection ritual. The cold marble slab, the indifferent eyes of the physicians. Most often, it's the phantom sensation, the tiny, miraculous flutter deep within your belly. The fierce grip of your daughter's impossibly small hand around your finger during one of those brief, torturous audiences. You remember the curve of her cheek, the dark down on her head, the milky scent of her. You remember the dragon throne, vast and distant in the candlelight. The scent of incense so thick it choked you, the profound isolation of being utterly alone in the most crowded place on earth. You walk sometimes, when the stiffness in your joints allows, not to the vibrant gardens, but to the older, quieter corners of the palace complex. You find yourself near the high walls of the nursery pavilions, separated by multiple courtyards and impassable gates. You stand for long moments, listening. Sometimes, carried on the wind, you hear the faint, sweet sound of children's laughter. Is hers among them? You strain to hear, your heart a frantic bird against your ribs. But the laughter is indistinct, blended, carried away by the breeze. The echoes of joy are not yours anymore. They belong to the living present, to mothers who are still summoned, to children whose faces you will never see. You turn away, the familiar hollow ache settling beneath your ribs, deeper than the winter cold. Visits to see your daughter become less frequent. Official notices arrive, delivered by a junior eunuch who barely glances at you. Princess is studying. Princess is unwell. Princess is engaged in ceremonial preparations. The distances, both physical and hierarchical, widen. The last audience was months ago. You stood, as always, at the prescribed distance. She was taller. Her face, losing its baby roundness, held a new solemnity, an awareness of her rank that hadn't been there before. She looked at you, her dark eyes, your eyes, meeting yours for a fleeting second. There was no spark of recognition, only the polite, detached curiosity a princess might show a minor palace functionary. She bowed, a small, precise movement taught by her nurses. You bowed lower, your forehead brushing the cool floor tiles. The scent of polished wood and incense filling your nostrils. When you rose, she was already being led away by a stern-faced matron, her small back straight in its miniature yellow robe. You were escorted out. The silence in the corridor outside was absolute, broken only by the fading tap of her tiny slippers on the stone. That was the last time. No official decree announces it. It simply stops. You are no longer summoned. The fragile thread, gossamer thin, has finally snapped. You are severed. Now you sit in your cold, north-facing room. The embroidery lies untouched in your lap. Outside, the weak afternoon sun slants through the paper window, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the still air. The only sound is the faint ticking of the cooling brazier and the distant, mournful cry of a crow perched on the high wall. The memories swirl, the terror of the arrival, the clinical horror of the selection, the suffocating silence of the emperor's chamber, the visceral fear and fleeting hope of carrying the seed, the invasive poison of imperial care, the sharp, sweet pain of seeing your daughter's face. They are all you have left. You wait and remember. The palace breathes. Around you, vast and ancient, carrying on its relentless, indifferent life. You are a whisper lost in its corridors, a fading scent on a discarded robe, a name slowly being erased from the scrolls of the living, settling into the soft, suffocating dust of the forgotten. The North Pavilion is not an end, but a slow sinking, a quiet drowning in the deep, still waters of time and imperial disregard. You smooth the worn silk in your lap, feeling the familiar texture under your calloused fingertips, and watch the dust dance in the dying light. Waiting, remembering, fading, the news arrives not with bells tolling, not with cries of mourning, tearing through the corridors, but with a profound, unsettling stillness. It begins subtly, a shift in the very air of the North Pavilion, usually thick with its own brand of quiet resignation. One morning, the distant, rhythmic tap-tap-tap of the night watchman's clappers doesn't come. The silence that follows is deeper, heavier, a held breath stretching taut across the entire forbidden city. Then, the chimes, the familiar markers of the celestial hours, simply cease. No resonant bong echoes down the stone passages. Time, that rigid master, governing. Every life within these walls seems to stumble, then halt entirely. You feel it first in the absence of sound. The usual muffled bustle from the distant kitchens, the scrape of a broom on a far courtyard, the faint murmur of eunuchs going about their duties, all vanish. A silence descends unlike any you've known, thick and velvety, pressing against the paper windows of your cold room. It's the silence of a great machine grinding to a stop, the silence of collective shock freezing 1,000 tongues. The scent changes next. The usual complex tapestry of incense, damp stone, coal smoke, and aging wood is abruptly overwhelmed. A new smell seeps through cracks under doors, through the very plaster of the walls, the dense, cloying perfume of sandalwood ash, not the warm, smoky scent of burning incense sticks, but the cold, grey smell of extinguished pyres, of vast quantities burned all at once. It carries the weight of finality, the acrid tang of endings. It mingles sickeningly with the older smells, turning the familiar palace air into the breath of a vast, ornate tomb. Confirmation comes hours later, not through proclamation, but through the faces of the serving women who bring the midday meal. Their usual impassive masks are fractured. Eyes are red-rimmed, swollen from silent weeping. Hands tremble as they set down the lacquered trays holding simple congee and pickled radish. They move like ghosts, their footsteps silent but heavy with dread. They don't speak. They don't meet your eyes. They simply bow lower than usual, a depth of obeisance that speaks volumes, and retreat quickly, leaving the scent of their fear and grief mingling with the sandalwood. Ashdod, the emperor, is dead. The words aren't spoken aloud in the North Pavilion, but they resonate in every hushed breath, every exchanged glance heavy with unspoken terror. The Son of Heaven, the dragon who anchored the world, whose merest whim dictated lives, whose touch, impersonal, terrifying, had once altered your own existence irrevocably. Gone, the central pillar of the vast, intricate structure that is the Forbidden City has crumbled. The repercussions ripple outwards, silent but seismic, reaching even the forgotten corners like yours. Change arrives swiftly, carried on the silent feet of senior eunuchs, whose robes are now somber black instead of serviceable grey. They move through the North Pavilion with scrolls and lists, their expressions grim, their efficiency chilling. They don't consult, they decree. Doors that have remained closed for years are opened, their occupants assessed with a glance. Names are called, not with respect, but with the dispassionate tone of an inventory being taken. Your turn comes. A eunuch you've never seen before stands in your doorway, holding an open scroll. His eyes skim your face, your worn robes, the sparse room. He doesn't use your title. Not Consort Ling, the name briefly bestowed during your fleeting season of relevance. He doesn't even use the impersonal lady. His voice is flat, devoid of inflection, stating a simple fact. Old woman of the North Pavilion, West Chamber. He makes a swift notation on his scroll. The brush scratches like a claw on stone. You were once consortling, now just old woman in the North Pavilion. The demotion is absolute, administrative, delivered without ceremony. Your identity, already frayed, is officially stripped, reduced to a location and a state of being. Reassignment follows. Your small north-facing room, with its familiar cracks in the plaster and frost patterns on the window, is deemed unsuitable, or perhaps simply needed for someone else deemed marginally less negligible. You are moved further, still deeper into the labyrinthine back corridors of the aging wing. The new room is smaller, darker, colder. It smells strongly of mildew and disuse. A single high window looks out onto a blank section of the high inner wall. The floor is bare stone, uneven. There is no brazier. The furnishings consist of a thin sleeping mat rolled in the corner and a low stool. Your few possessions, the worn embroidery hoop, the simple wooden comb, the unused handkerchief with the Empress's lotus motif hidden at the bottom of a small bundle, seem absurdly out of place in this stark space. You are a piece of unwanted furniture shoved into a dusty storeroom. The palace itself seems to change around you. The silence persists, but it's no longer the shocked hush of the first hours. It's the silence of profound transition, laced with the undercurrent of frantic, unseen activity. You hear faintly through the thick walls the distant sounds of heavy objects being moved, the sharp crackle of imperial yellow silk being unfurled for mourning drapes, the low rhythmic chanting of monks beginning their ceaseless sutras for the departed dragon. New guards appear at the intersections of corridors, younger, harder-faced, wearing different insignia. Their eyes scan the surroundings with a vigilance that borders on hostility. the scent of sandalwood ash deepens, layered now with the smell of wet ink from hastily penned edicts, and the sharp, clean scent of camphor and cedar being used to prepare the imperial coffin in distant, inaccessible halls. The echoes of the past, your constant companions in the forgotten pavilion, take on a new, brittle quality. Memories of the emperor, not the man, but the overwhelming presence, the source of all fear and favor, surface with jarring clarity. The cold assessment in his eyes that first night, the scent of imperial incense clinging to your skin. For days after, the terrifying efficiency of the medical interventions ordered in his name, the profound indifference that sealed your fate as your relevance faded. The past burns like incense, fragrant, fading, gone. The memories carry the same cloying sweetness and underlying acridity as the sandalwood ash permeating the palace. They were vivid once, potent, dictating the very rhythm of your existence. Now they feel like smoke, insubstantial, dissipating. The man who embodied absolute power is reduced to rituals, to ash, to a name that will soon be spoken only in formal histories. You sit on the low stool in your new barren room, the cold stone leaching the warmth from your bones. The bundle containing your meager possessions lies unopened at your feet. Outside your high window, the blank wall offers no distraction, only a reminder of enclosure. The distant chanting drones on a monotonous counterpoint to the silence within your cell. The frantic energy of the palace preparing for a new reign, the accession of a son, a brother. Whoever the scrolls and whispers name feels like a storm raging beyond thick walls. It doesn't touch you here. You are beyond relevance, beyond notice. Even in death's shadow, the dragon is dead. The world he ordered, the world that defined your existence, from hopeful arrival to forgotten relic, has ended with him. The intricate machinery grinds on, recalibrating for a new master. But your part in it is finished. You are a relic of the previous reign, a footnote already fading. The sandalwood ash settles, the chanting continues, the cold deepens. You wrap your thin robe tighter around yourself, a shiver that has little to do with the temperature running. Through you, the past, with all its scents and silences and terrors, is truly gone. What remains is this bare room, this profound silence, and the slow, chilling realization that even oblivion has its hierarchies. And yours is the anonymity of the storeroom, the old woman of the North Pavilion, waiting not for anything, but simply waiting out the end. The incense has burned down. Only the cold ash remains. The Emperor's death casts a long, cold shadow, but in the North Pavilion, shadows were already deep. The frantic energy of transition, the muffled sounds of a new reign being stitched together in distant, gilded halls, barely penetrates the thick walls and the heavier curtain of neglect here. You sit on the low stool in your barren room, the cold seeping up through the stone floor into your bones. A permanent resident now. The sandalwood ash scent, though fading slightly, still lingers, a ghost of the departed dragon. But another scent weaves through it, older, fainter, the dust of countless unwritten stories, the salt residue of uncounted tears absorbed by the very plaster. You are not alone in your forgetting. The North Pavilion is a repository, a quiet annex to the imperial story, filled with lives reduced to husks, to titles stripped, to whispered designations. The one who never laughed, the one with the jade hairpin, the one from Suzhou, their faces, like yours, are landscapes of powdered resignation, eyes holding the flat sheen of pooled, stagnant water. You share the weak tea, the thin kanji, the draughts that whistle through cracks. You share the silence, broken only by the rasp of breath, the occasional sigh that seems to echo down the decades. But mostly, you share the unspoken burden of memory. Memories not of glory, but of tiny, personal apocalypses, of hopes quietly strangled, of selves slowly erased within the vermilion maze. Sometimes, in the thin hours before dawn, when the cold is deepest and the silence most absolute, the walls seem to whisper, not with words, but with echoes. You close your eyes, the rough wood of the stool pressing into your thighs, and you see them, not as they are now, but as they were. Fragments, ghosts conjured by shared exile. You see the mute girl. She arrived years before you, they say, barely. 14, with eyes wide as a startled doe. She never spoke, not a single word, not even a whimper during the selection ritual. They whisper, was she born silent, or did terror seal her lips forever upon entering the vermilion gates? She was beautiful in a fragile, porcelain way, selected, summoned, carried in the rough silk shroud. But something broke, or perhaps it was always broken. After her first night, she retreated further, folding in on herself like a paper flower. In rain, she was never summoned again, never deemed suitable. She moved through the women's quarters like a pale ghost, untouched, unwanted, her silence a reproach, a mystery. She communicated only through gestures, a trembling finger pointing, a slight nod. She spent hours staring at her reflection in the still water of a washing basin, or tracing patterns on the dusty floor with a fingertip. She lived among them, yet utterly apart, an island of silence in the sea of hushed whispers and painted smiles. She faded into the north pavilion seamlessly, her silence now just one note in the general quiet. Did she dream? Did she remember the village she came from, the sound of her own voice? No one knew. She simply existed, a vessel of profound stillness, until one winter, the cold found a weakness the palace physicians never could, and she was gone as quietly as she arrived. The mute girl who was never touched, her name lost, her story a sigh in the drafty corridor. You remember the favorite? Consort Hua, a name once spoken with a blend of awe and venom. She arrived like a comet, breathtakingly beautiful, radiating a warmth that seemed alien within these cold walls. She captured the emperor's gaze instantly, held it for years. Summons were frequent. Gifts flowed to her quarters, bolts of shimmering silk from the farthest reaches, jewels that caught the light like captured stars, rare fruits out of season. She bore not one, but 5 sons. 5, an almost unimaginable feat, each birth cementing her status, each prince a jewel in her crown. She should have been untouchable, radiant, secure on a pinnacle of imperial favor. Yet, you recall her eyes. In rare, unguarded moments, when the painted smile slipped, her eyes held a depth of loneliness so profound it was chilling. Surrounded by attendants, watched by envious rivals, mother to 5 imperial princes, she walked in a desert of her own making. The envy was too thick, too poisonous. Trust was impossible. Her sons were whisked away to nurseries, then tutors, then their own establishments. Visits were formal, prescribed. The warmth she naturally radiated found no echo in the calculating hearts around her. She lived in a gilded cage, within the gilded cage, isolated by her own success. The whispers said she'd stand for hours on a secluded balcony, staring not at the magnificent gardens, but at a sliver of distant mountains visible beyond the walls, her face a mask of silent yearning. The constant vigilance, the weight of maintaining perfection, the gnawing isolation amidst opulence. It eroded her from within. The vibrant comet dimmed. She grew thin, her famous warmth replaced by a brittle fragility. The Emperor's favor, ever fickle, eventually shifted to newer stars. She wasn't discarded, not overtly, but the summons ceased. The gifts dwindled. She retreated, not to the North Pavilion immediately, but to a spacious, silent suite where the echoes of past glory rang hollow. The favorite who bore 5 sons yet died of loneliness. They found her one morning, seated by her window, a half-finished cup of cold tea beside her, her eyes fixed on that distant sliver of freedom, finally still. Her sons mourned, officially. The Emperor noted her passing in a scroll, but the profound, aching solitude that killed her, unrecorded. And then there's the story that chills the blood, told only in the deepest shadows of the North Pavilion, a cautionary tale worn smooth by retelling. The girl who poisoned her rival. She wasn't always cruel, they insist. Just desperate. Young, from a minor family, she saw her chance slipping away as a new, vivacious concubine caught the Emperor's eye. The rival bloomed, summoned frequently, her laughter too loud. Some muttered echoing in the corridors, her future bright. The desperate girl watched, her own painted smile cracking, her hope curdling into something dark and viscous. It wasn't a swift poison, something subtle, something that mimicked a wasting illness. A few grains of something bitter, something slow-acting, slipped into a shared pot of chrysanthemum tea over weeks. The rival grew pale, lost her appetite. Her vibrant energy faded. The physicians were baffled. Melancholy, they murmured. An imbalance of humors. The desperate girl watched, her heart a stone in her chest. When the rival finally succumbed, thin as a wraith, her beauty extinguished, there was no triumph in the poisoner's eyes, only horror. The reality of what she'd done crashed down. The coveted summons came, not for her, but for another new face. Her act gained her nothing, only a monstrous secret. The guilt became her constant companion, more oppressive than any jailer. She avoided mirrors, seeing the dead girl's accusing eyes in her own reflection. She jumped at shadows. She couldn't bear the scent of chrysanthemum tea. She withdrew, haunted, her once sharp eyes perpetually shadowed. She ended up in the North Pavilion young, her spirit broken not by neglect, but by her own poisoned hand. She rarely spoke, but sometimes, in the depths of night, the others would hear it, a low, ragged weeping that seemed to come from the very stones. The girl who poisoned her rival and wept for years. Her tears were endless, a silent river of remorse flowing in the dark. Long after the rival's name was forgotten by all but her murderer, she died clutching a tiny, dried chrysanthemum flower, pressed between the pages of a prayer book she never read. You open your eyes, the cold room is the same. The weak light through the high window hasn't shifted. The scent of sandalwood ash and ancient dust persists, but the air feels thicker, heavier, charged with the silent presence of these women, their stories bleeding into yours. They sit around you now, not as flesh, but as echoes, the silent ghost, the lonely star, the weeping poisoner, their fates, different paths converging on the same desolate shore. Each had a name once, a name spoken by mothers, perhaps by lovers, names that held hopes and dreams before the palace claimed them. Ling Hua, Mei's Yu, names that were currency, then burdens, then erased now. Now they are simply entries in some neglected ledger in a dusty archive, if recorded at all. Their bodies, when they finally surrendered to time or despair, were burned quietly. No grand ceremonies, no ancestral tablets in prominent halls. Their ashes were collected, poured without ceremony into plain, unglazed urns. No names etched on the side, no dates, just anonymous clay vessels holding the powdered residue of lives that once trembled with hope, fear, desire, and pain within these vermilion walls. Now they are simply ashes in an urn with no label. Dust returned to dust, names dissolved into the indifferent air of the forbidden city. Their stories whispered only by the wind sighing through the empty pavilions or carried in the silent, shared memory of the forgotten women who remain, waiting their turn to join the unmarked collection. You smooth the coarse fabric of your robe, the gesture automatic, and feel the weight of all their silenced histories settling onto your own bowed shoulders. Another layer of dust in the quiet tomb of the North Pavilion. Sleep is a stranger tonight. It has been, more often than not, in this cold cell at the edge of the world. The thin mat offers no comfort, the darkness behind your eyelids no refuge. The Emperor's death, the seismic shift in the palace's unseen gears, has stirred the deep silt of memory. The ghosts of the other women, the mute girl's fathomless silence, consort who is terrible loneliness, the poisoner's endless tears linger in the chill air, their echoes woven into the very dust motes dancing in the sliver of moonlight, piercing your high window. The scent of sandalwood ash, though fading, still clings, a funereal perfume overlaid on the older, deeper smells, damp mortar, mildew, and the faint, metallic tints of time itself rusting away. You rise, not with purpose, but with the quiet inevitability of a leaf detaching from a winter branch. The stone floor is icy beneath your bare feet, the cold a sharp, familiar shock. You wrap your thin robe tighter, a futile gesture against the pervasive chill that seems to emanate from the centuries-old stones. The door to your tiny room slides open with a soft, protesting sigh. The corridor beyond is a tunnel of deeper darkness, barely illuminated by the faintest grey seep of moonlight from unseen courtyards far above. You walk, not towards anything, simply away. Away from the confines of the cell, the weight of the mat, the press of the ghosts. Your footsteps, soft as falling petals, are the only sound in the immense stillness. The silence here is different from the shocked hush after the Emperor's death. This is the silence of profound emptiness, the quiet of a heart that has stopped beating, the vast, hollow quietude of a place abandoned by its animating force. The frantic energy of the new Rain's installation feels galaxies away, muffled by layers of stone and indifference. Here, in the forgotten arteries of the Forbidden City, only the bones remain. You move through corridors you haven't walked in years, perhaps decades. The North Pavilion gives way to older sections, their grandeur crumbling at the edges. Vermilion paint flakes from wooden pillars like dried blood. Intricate carvings on eaves are softened by time and grime, the dragons and phoenixes looking weary, their celestial battles frozen in mid-decay. The air grows colder, damper, smelling less of sandalwood and more of wet earth, ancient timber, and something else. Something sweetly rotten, like forgotten fruit left in a hidden corner. Incense clings only as a ghostly afterthought, a memory of ritual perfuming, the pervasive scent of slow dissolution. Lanterns hang unlit. their paper shades torn and grey with dust, like sightless eyes. Moonlight, where it filters through broken latticework or open courtyards, spills in cold, silver puddles on the worn stone flags. You pass doorways barred with rusted iron, leading to rooms swallowed by shadows. You cross a small, overgrown courtyard where a stone fountain, dry for generations, stands choked with weeds, its basin a nest for brittle, dead leaves. The silence is so deep you can hear the skittering of a rat's claws somewhere in the walls, a tiny, frantic heartbeat. In the stillness, the walls themselves seem to lean closer, whispering not with words, but with the accumulated weight of unseen lives. They murmur of stifled sobs absorbed by plaster, of desperate prayers breathed into the night air, of the rustle of silk against stone as women walked these same paths, hearts pounding with hope or dread. The walls whisper, they hold the echoes of 1,000 midnights, 1,000 unspoken fears, 1,000 quiet despairs. You find yourself standing at the threshold of the vast, central courtyard before the Hall of Supreme Harmony. You shouldn't be here. Guards patrol these areas, even now, but the night is deep, the transition chaotic, and the shadows are your allies. The courtyard is a sea of pale stone flags, washed clean by moonlight, stretching towards the immense, dark hulk of the hall itself. It looks less like a seat of power tonight, more like the carcass of a behemoth, its tiered roofs black against the star-strewn sky, the intricate details lost in the monochrome gloom. The scale is crushing, inhuman. The silence here is monumental, a physical presence pressing down. You are an ant on a vast, empty plain. This is where emperors held court, where destinies were decreed, where the pulse of an empire was felt. But standing here now, in the profound quiet, you feel none of that supposed power. You feel only the staggering weight of its absence. The sheer inhuman scale of the architecture speaks not of glory, but of the terrible distance between the gilded perch and the cold stone floor. The distance the mute girl crossed, swaddled in rough silk. The distance consort who was stared across towards the unreachable mountains. The distance your daughter vanished across, escorted by stern nurses. This vast emptiness wasn't built for human connection. It was built to awe, to isolate, to enforce the impossible gulf between the dragon and the dust. You turn away from the hall's looming shadow. Your feet, seemingly of their own accord, carry you not back towards the north pavilion, but deeper into the labyrinth, towards the older residential quarters, the places where you once lived, waited, hoped. You pass the silent, darkened doorways of the women's wing you inhabited long ago. No light spills from beneath the doors. No sound of rustling silk or hushed conversation. Just emptiness. You pause before the door of the small room you occupied. After your selection, the room where you waited for the summons that changed everything. The wood feels cold under your fingertips. You remember the terror, the awful anticipation, the scent of your own fear mixing with the sandalwood drifting from the main halls. A lifetime ago, a different self, further on. You pass the windowless chamber where the selection ritual stripped you bare under the indifferent moonlight. The heavy door is closed, locked. You can almost smell the steam, the herbs, the clinical scent of the physicians. Feel the cold marble slab beneath your back. The humiliation rises, sharp and fresh, a phantom ache. You walk faster, the cold stone biting your soles. You find yourself near the high walls bordering the nursery pavilions. You stop, pressing a hand against the cold, rough stone. As if conjured by your thought, by the deep, silent yearning that never truly fades, it comes. faint, sweet, impossibly distant, carried on a stray eddy of the night wind. The sound of a young girl laughing, a clear, bright sound, untroubled, bursting with innocent joy. It hangs in the air for a fleeting second, a shard of pure, living sound in the vast necropolis of memory and stone. A young girl laughs in a dream. Is it her, your daughter, grown, dreaming some happy dream within her gilded cage? Or another child, another vessel of hope, just beginning her journey through these same vermilion corridors? The sound pierces you, a sudden, sweet agony. It is the sound of life persisting, of innocence untouched yet by the slow poison of the palace. The sound of a present moment you are irrevocably excluded from. The laugh fades, swallowed by the immense silence. You lean your forehead against the cold stone wall, the roughness scraping your skin. The ghosts swirl around you, not just the women of the North Pavilion, but your own younger self. The girl trembling in the red palanquin, the girl lying rigid on the emperor's bed, the girl cradling the first flutters of life within her, the girl weeping silently after a final, formal glimpse of her daughter's face. You see them all, flickering in the moonlight like reflections on dark water. History is not written by the emperor, is felt by those who waited in the dark. The realization settles upon you, not as a thought, but as a deep, resonant truth, vibrating in your bones. The scrolls will speak of reigns and decrees, battles and alliances, the rise and fall of dynasties. They will name the dragons who sat on the golden throne, but they will not speak of the rough silk against your skin, the metallic taste of fear, the hollow ache after performing imperial duty, the invasive cold of the physician's needles, the crushing weight of the empress's unseen gaze, the bitter tang of prescribed medicine, the sweet sour scent of a newborn's head, the profound silence of abandonment. They will not record the mute girl's terror, consort who was devastating loneliness, the poisoner's endless remorse, the dust settling on unmarked urns. That history, the true history, the history written in nerve endings and stifled breaths, in silent tears and the quiet erosion of hope, lives here, in the cold stone under your feet, in the scent of decay beneath the sandalwood, in the echoes absorbed by these ancient walls, in the memory of a young girl's laugh drifting through the imperial night. It is felt in the marrow of those who waited, who served, who loved, who feared, who broke, who faded within the gilded cage. You are a vessel of that history, a quiet soul walking through the empty palace, remembering lives once lived, not in the brilliant light of the throne room, but in the velvet shadows, in the suffocating silence, in the cold cells at the edge of the world. The forbidden city breathes around you, its vastness a monument not to power, but to the immense, silent cost paid in countless, forgotten hearts. You stand very still, listening to the wind sigh through the cracks, carrying the ashes of names, the echoes of laughter, and the profound, unending whisper of the dark. The wind sighs again, not through the vermilion gates this time, but over the high, curved roofs glazed in darkness, whispering across the yellow tiles like a ghost tracing the spine of a slumbering dragon. It carries the last vestiges of sandalwood ash, that heavy, cloying scent of endings, scattering it into the vast, indifferent night. Down in the labyrinthine depths of the forbidden city, the silence deepens, not the shocked hush of death, or the tense quiet of transition, but the profound stillness of exhaustion. The palace, that immense gilded beast, finally settles into something resembling sleep. The frantic churning of its unseen heart slows. The distant chanting of monks has ceased. Even the rats in the walls seem to hold their breath. The great machine of empire rests, gathering strength for the new sun, the new reign, the new dragon who will sit beneath the carved heavens of the throne hall. You stand, a shadow among shadows, in the cold corridor near the North Pavilion. The phantom laughter of the young girl has faded, leaving only the echo of its sweetness resonating in the hollow chamber of your memory. The ghosts, your own younger selves, the mute girl, the lonely favorite, the weeping poisoner, all the unnamed women whose dust settles in unmarked urns. They too seem to recede, not vanishing, but softening, blending into the ancient mortar, the worn stone, the very fabric of the place that witnessed their silent struggles. Their stories, their pains, their stifled breaths are now part of the palace's deep, slow exhalation. The walls whisper, but the sound is no longer distinct voices. It's the low hum of time itself, the resonance of centuries of unrecorded lives absorbed into the stone. The cold from the floor seeps deeper into your bones, a familiar, almost comforting ache. It is the cold of time passing, of stillness earned through endurance. You look down at your hands, pale in the weak moonlight filtering through a high, broken lattice. They are no longer the trembling hands of the girl sold for family honor, nor the clenched fists of the woman enduring prescribed bleedings, nor the yearning hands that ached to hold a child swaddled in imperial yellow. They are simply hands, marked by time, by needlework, by the chill of the North Pavilion. They have held fear, performed duty, cradled fragile hope, and now they hold only the quiet weight of survival. You unclench them slowly, letting the coarse fabric of your robe fall from your grasp. Let the silk fall, not the fine lotus silk of arrival, nor the shimmering green of the selection, nor even the worn robe you wear now. Let the idea of silk fall, the symbol of status, of worth measured in thread and favor, the shroud of expectation and submission. It dissolves like mist, leaving only the bare, unadorned truth of your existence within these walls, a witness, a vessel of memory, a quiet soul who navigated the treacherous currents and washed ashore in this quiet eddy of time. The scent that lingers is complex, the damp stone eternal, the mildew of neglect, the faint metallic temps of old iron and older tears. But beneath it, almost imperceptibly, the last trace of imperial incense, not the heavy dragon's blood of the emperor's chamber, nor the cloying sweetness of the empress's courts, but the ghost of it, a memory of a scent. Let the incense drift. Let its symbolic weight, the rituals, the protocols, the suffocating perfume of power and obligation, drift away on that same night wind that scatters the ash. It was never truly yours. It was the atmosphere of the cage. Let it dissipate, leaving behind the cleaner, starker sense of time and silence, and the faint, enduring aroma of the cedar forests that might lie beyond these impossible walls. You turn, your footsteps silent once more on the worn stone, retracing the path not to the heart of power, but to the edge of the world. Your small, cold room in the depths of the North Pavilion. The door slides shut behind you with a soft, final sigh. The space is barren, the thin mat, the low stool, the high window framing a slice of night sky and a blank section of wall. It is not a home, it is a cell, but it is also a sanctuary of sorts, a place where the frantic dance of favor and fear cannot reach, a place where the only eyes upon you are your own, and the watchful gaze of the past, now softened into acceptance, The immense weariness that has been your companion for years settles over you now. Not as a burden, but as a blanket. It is the weariness of a long journey completed, not with fanfare, but with the simple act of putting one foot in front of the other until the path ended. The constant vigilance, the calculation of every gesture, the smothering of hope, the bearing of pain, it is done. The emperor who dictated your fate is ash. The empress whose gaze was an unseen weight now turns her attention to a new constellation of stars and threats. The daughter you bore is a princess in another wing of the vast, uncaring machine. Your purpose, as defined by scrolls and silks and imperial need, is extinguished. You are no longer watched. The assessing eyes of eunuchs, the jealous glances of rivals, the clinical scrutiny of physicians, the distant, terrifying gaze of the empress, the hopeful, fearful watchfulness of your own younger self, all have turned away. The spotlight of imperial attention, whether cruel or caring, has moved on. You exist in the shadows, unseen, unremarked upon. The freedom is terrifying in its vastness, yet profoundly peaceful. There is nothing left to perform for, no mask left to wear. You are simply present. A quiet awareness in the quiet dark. You are no longer waiting. This is the deepest release. No more waiting for the palanquin to stop, for the summons to come, for the physician's verdict, for the empress's whim, for a glimpse of a child's face, for the slow erosion of time to finally end. The waiting defined you, shaped your every breath for decades. Now, the waiting is over. The future holds no appointments, no summons, no hope of change. It holds only the continuation of this stillness, this quiet fade into the palace's enduring stone. There is a strange serenity. In the finality of it, no more anticipation, no more dread, just being here now. In the cool, quiet dark of the North Pavilion, as the wind murmurs over the roof tiles far above, so settle back, not onto silken pillows, but into the profound quiet that surrounds you. Let the weight of history, of memory, of your own long journey settle around your shoulders like the softest, most familiar shroud. Feel the cold stone beneath you, solid and unchanging. Listen to the wind's eternal sigh, the only lullaby this ancient place knows. The palace sleeps, the ghosts rest, the incense is ash, the silk is memory, the watching eyes are closed, the waiting is done. You too may rest now. Let the breath you have held for so long, through terror and duty and silent despair, finally release. Let it mingle with the night air, joining the sighs of all the women who came before, becoming part of the wind that sweeps over the forbidden city. There is nothing more to be done, nothing more to be endured. Simply rest. Let the darkness hold you, not as a prison, but as a gentle embrace. Let the silence sing its wordless song. The story of the dragon's bed, of power and submission, of hope and despair, of arrival and forgetting. Your story within that vast tapestry has been told. It echoes now only in the stones, in the scent of time, in the quiet space behind your own closed eyelids. The final chime has faded. The last page turns. The light within the paper lantern gutters and goes out. Rest.